Well, boys, what's the crack? So for this longer form content, I decided to use this YouTube, just to try to get my point across a little bit more, and actually include a bit more information in these videos. So yeah, this is basically a lot of things that you can use going forward to improve your performance, and improve everything to do with nutrition, and really bring you up to that next level. Because it's all well and good doing all this training, doing all this skill work, but if you don't have the energy levels, if you're not recovering quick enough, then all this training that you're doing is kind of going to waste, as you're not really getting the most out of it, and you won't be able to reach your full potential. Okay, so this first video is going to be everything about fueling. Okay, and everything you need to know about fueling, making sure that you have sufficient energy levels, and just making sure that going into these training sessions, going into these matches, you are fueled in the best way possible. Okay, so one sec. So with this, the kind of overarching thing is all going to be about our carbohydrate intake. Okay, so our carbohydrates is the macronutrient that is responsible for providing us with energy. Okay, and this can be split up into two different things. So we have our complex and our simple carbohydrates. So our simple, these release energy quickly, and this is things like your sports drinks, your jellies, cereals, fruit, things like this, that release energy very quickly. So they're useful in scenarios where, say, half an hour before a match, and you need that quick boost of energy. These are really good, and these should be your go-to in these certain situations. Whereas complex carbohydrates, these are what we want to kind of have most of our diet revolve around. Okay, so these are things like your rices, potatoes, pasta, oats, brown bread, sweet potato, all these different things. Okay, and this is what the majority of your diet should be made up of when it comes to your carbohydrate intake. So simple carbohydrates release energy quickly, complex carbohydrates release energy slowly. So as we said, half an hour before a game, opt for a simple sugar. But if it was 3 or 4 hours before a game, so your biggest meal before a match, this should be all about your complex carbohydrates, and allowing this meal to release this energy slowly in the build up to the match, so that you can have these, or kind of make use of this energy, by allowing it sufficient time to digest within your body. Okay, so typically a lot of athletes will underconsume in carbohydrates, and this is just because they just aren't educated on their importance, and how much carbohydrates we actually require. So especially around high intensity sessions. Okay, so typically what we would like to do first is to identify which sessions in your week are of the highest priority and are of the highest intensity. Okay, so this is the first thing that I'll probably do with you guys, is to get basically a look at your entire week. Okay, so across the 7 days, how many sessions do you have, and what are the intensity of these sessions? So say for example, you're playing one match, you might have one high intensity session, maybe a lower intensity pitch session, and then a gym session or two are on top of that as well. So what we really want to do, with our carbohydrate intake, is to identify the sessions which are of the highest intensity, and then have them as the days where we are really optimizing that carbohydrate intake, and really getting the most out of this carbohydrate intake. And then in comparison, we have the lower intensity sessions, so on these days we can then reduce this carbohydrate intake, as our energy requirements aren't going to be as high, as we aren't as active, as the sessions aren't as intense. Okay, so this concept is known as fueling for the work that is required. So by adopting this concept, you are essentially doing as much as you need to do. Okay, so say it's a day where you only have a low intensity gym session, or you have no training at all. There's no need for these high consumptions of carbohydrates. But in comparison, if you have a match or a really tough pitch session during the week, these are the days where you really want to be upping that carbohydrate intake and really getting the most out of this, to ensure that you do have sufficient energy going into these training sessions and going into these matches. So far we've broke up our carbohydrate intake into simple, complex, described what both of these are, the role they play, and the situations that they should be used in. We spoke about fueling for the work required, the whole concept of periodizing our week based on the intensity of the sessions. Okay, so depending on the goal of a given day, so going into a match or a training session of high intensity, the goal is to perform as best as you can. So therefore, the goal should be about fueling. Whereas if you have a low intensity session or maybe a day where you have no training or match at all, then the focus will shift from fueling to recovery. And then with this, we can lower our carbohydrate intake and then put our priorities on different things such as our protein, which is going to be a lot better for recovery. But I'll go through that in a different video anyway. So yeah, so far complex carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates, and fueling for the work required. Now we can get into like a little bit more detailed stuff. So I suppose what people kind of like to focus on is their pre-match meal. And to be honest, this isn't probably going to be the most important thing, especially when you are kind of preparing for a match. Like the day before and even the probably 36 hours beforehand is going to be a lot more important when it does come to fueling for these matches. Okay, so a lot of the energy that we are going to use in a match is built up in this 24 hours to 36 hours before a match. Okay, so this is referred to as carb loading. A good few of you may have heard this already. But this essentially allows us to build up our glycogen stores. Glycogen is just a stored form of carbohydrate in our body. So to maximize these glycogen stores and ensure that we do have sufficient energy on these match days and on these high intensity training days. So yeah, with this, on carb loading days, we are looking to try get around 5 to 10 grams of carbohydrate per kg of body weight. So typically what I'll use is 7 grams, just in around the middle of 5 to 10. So 7 grams per kg of body weight. So for an 80 kg athlete, this will be 560 grams of carbohydrates. So this will differ for everyone depending on your weight. So I will go into these in more detail with you when I get some details on your weights and things like this. But yeah, this is kind of what we are aiming for. So I use that example of an 8 kg athlete, 560 grams of carbohydrates. And it is quite a lot of food. Like that day before, you will be really prioritizing carbohydrates at every meal, and probably like increasing your portion sizes with that as well. So I can go through, I can send you out a sample of what this might look like in a day. I have things done up that I was using with the Limerick 20s, and like it is a lot of food. I probably will take 4 to 5 meals with some snacks on top of that as well. But it is really important that this is looked at, and it, like, I would probably go to say that it is probably the most important thing when it comes to sports performance and nutrition. Like it actually cannot be emphasized enough how important this carbohydrate intake is, and especially this carb loading phase. Like even I've seen in the last 2 years, like how much more energy I have on the pitch when I am like actually looking at this carbohydrate intake and actually getting towards these 7 grams per kg of body weight. Like it does make such a huge difference to how you feel on the pitch, and not just like in terms of like from a physical point of view in terms of your strength and running, but also in decision making. Okay, so carbohydrates is the main fuel source for our body, but it's also the main fuel source for your brain as well. So things like, especially in football, like decision making, like looking for that final pass, especially in the last 10 or 15 minutes where most matches are won or lost. This is really going to come into play then. Just ensuring that you do have enough energy to make the correct decision, make that last run. Like if you are not optimizing this carbohydrate intake, it is going to be a lot harder to make that run, to make that pass. Like, do you know what I mean? Like reaction time, decision making, things like this are all affected by our carbohydrate intake. So this is why it is just so important, and it is the first thing that I'm going through on this video, as it is just the most important thing. Okay, so yeah, now we've covered carbohydrates, what they're made up of, broken them up into two different things. We spoke about, Lord, I don't know what that is. I have no clue. We spoke about fueling for the work that is required. And now we spoke about our carb loading and how we can really optimize these energy levels the day before a match. So the next thing that we're going to want to look at is match day itself. Okay, so we spoke about match day -1, so which is the day before a match. And now we want to focus on match day itself and basically how we can top up these energy levels that we have built up the day before. So as I said, day before, most important, where the majority of our energy levels are built up. And then the day of, we are just looking to top up these energy levels, okay? So day before, building, the day of, topping up. So with this, on the day of a match, like you have these typical meals that people like just see online or whatever, that like your chicken and pasta, your chicken and rice. Like if these don't work for you and you don't like them, like you don't have to eat meals like that, okay? Like this is just seen as something online that you just, or like it's just normal to have chicken and rice before a match or chicken and pasta. But really on the day of a match, you want to be having foods that sit well with you, that digest well with you, and that you actually are able to consume. Okay, so for example, like before a match, I'll probably focus mostly on things like Nature Valley bars, orange juice, cereals, even things like jam on toast or something like. Lord, I'm dying for a sneeze. I see. State of my eyes like hay fever is absolutely breaking me up. But yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, match day. Focus on foods that digest well with you. Like obviously as the day goes on or the later a match is, you probably will need a biggish enough meal. So this is where you can go with your chicken and rice or chicken and broccoli, whatever. But say if you've a match at 2 o'clock, like things like cereal bars like Nature Valley bars, orange juice, and then the closer you get to a match, this is where you can focus on things like your bananas, like Jaffa cakes, jellies, typical things that you would get in the dressing room anyway. But like I can't stress how important it is to have foods that digest well with you on the day of a match, because the last thing you want is an upset tummy, or especially if you are nervous before a match, because I know that I kind of do find it hard to eat before a match. So this is why you want to focus on these things that do digest well with you, and still allow you to get that carbohydrate intake in, to make sure that these energy levels are just staying topped up between your match day -1 and actual throw-in itself. So this is where things like even like liquids can be so handy. So things like orange juice, Lucid Sports, energy drinks, things like this, really helpful and really good. For anyone that does get nervous before a match and can't really stomach any sort of big meals, these things are also really helpful as well. But yeah, like this is kind of the main things that I wanted to speak about here. Just give you a bit of insight into all these different aspects. So what carbohydrates do, why we need them, how they're split up into different food groups. What else we speak about? Fueling for the work required. So on different days, you will have higher energy requirements. So therefore, you'll need a higher carbohydrate intake. Periodizing your week based on this. Carb loading day, what we're aiming for, how we can achieve this. So different foods that you can focus on, and then match day itself and the carbohydrate intake that we are looking for on match day. So easily digestible, and things that just suit your tummy well, but still allowing you to get that carbohydrate intake in. So yeah, that's pretty much everything to do with fueling for performance, and making sure that you do have enough energy going into these training sessions and matches, so that you can show off and showcase the skills that you've been working on. And like this is really important, and is just going to like kind of really take your performance to the next level, and allow you to last these matches a lot better than you may do so at the moment if you're not optimizing this fueling aspect of your game.